I'm Christine. Welcome to the Recovering Perfectionist Podcast, where I empower you to develop sustainable habits, challenge society, and take messy action. It's time to align with the universe for the full human experience and redefine what it really means to be successful.
It's too good, the secret is out and wow.
Welcome back to the Recovering Perfectionist Podcast, the official podcast of the dance wellness community. I am here. It's another month. I am here with one of our incredible ambassadors to the dance wellness community, Dominic Seigler. Welcome, Dominic.
Hello. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. I am very excited to introduce Dominic to you guys for many, many reasons. As you know, our ambassadors are they're very special to us because these are people who are spreading the message of what the dance wellness community represents. Also, these are individuals who have been through their own journeys and testimonies that are here to kind of share, hey, we're all going through it together and we're here to help. And so Dominic just recently moved to California from across the country to be able to pursue his dream of competing in Smooth, which you've been doing for many, many years. And he's going to tell you his whole story, which I'm very, very excited. But how are you loving California?
It's great. I love the weather. I was built for warm weather. So
Yes.
this is amazing for me.
I love
the
that.
beach, the mountains, nice people. Everybody's very chill here. I like it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, California is great. Where you moved from where?
I actually grew up in Alexandria, Virginia, and then I moved to Minnesota. I've been up and down the East Coast most of my life, but I moved to Minnesota about 2.5 years ago for my last dance partnership and some business opportunity, and decided to keep moving west for this partnership. And I think this is where I'm supposed to end up regardless. And
Yeah, the journey continues.
yeah,
I love that.
yeah.
I love it so much. So tell us a little bit about how because everyone's journey of how they got into dancing, even though some stories have similar points, they are obviously very unique and very different. And so explain to us a little bit about how ballroom dance came into your life.
I was just turned 18, and I went on a date with a Russian girl. I don't actually remember her name. I only hung out with her a few times. And it was our second date, and she told me that she was a dancer. I assumed Russian equals ballet. I didn't really know much about ballroom dancing at the time. And she says, "Oh, I have a show coming up this weekend, a performance this weekend. You should come watch." And it was not ballet; it was ballroom dancing. And I was wowed. This is amazing. I've seen this on TV a couple times, but I'd never seen it in person. And I started taking group classes. And about 2 months after I'd started group classes, the owner of the studio came to me and told me, he said, "Hey, I need a new male instructor. You have a lot of potential. You're a clean slate. I'll train you. Do you want a job?" And I said, "Sure, I'd love this." And so he trained me in, the beginner stuff, bronze 1, 2 of the main American dances, and was like, "Okay, you're an instructor now." And I kind of just got thrown into it. And
that is a similar point in a lot of people's stories.
Yeah. Learned by trial and error.
That's it. Yeah.
And basically he kind of was at the end of his career. He kind of was there part-time. So I basically taught myself. Once he taught me the basics for about 6 months, he kind of wasn't there very often. And I basically more or less ran the studio myself with a few other also up and coming instructors that also didn't know anything. So it's kind of the four of us, and the blind leading the blind. And
yeah,
I'm really happy that was how my career began, because looking back, I have made every mistake that you can imagine, and I've taught it. And because I didn't have a mentor, a coach, a guidance, a lot of training at the beginning, it gave me this unique skill to be able to assess what was wrong with what needs to be improved about an action or a dance, and find the root of it, because I had to develop these skills myself to be able to progress. And I'd been teaching about 8 years before I moved to Alexandria, Virginia. So I grew up in Charlottesville, Virginia. It's a very small town, but then I moved to Alexandria when I was about 26 or 7. In that entire time, I had one coaching with Pat Tremor. I loved that woman.
Oh,
She was
wow.
the
Oh, yeah,
sweetest
she's
lady.
amazing.
She was
Yeah.
my very first coaching,
What a
and
legend in our
I'll never forget
industry.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so not to age you, but now at this point, you have obviously had lots of training, lots of coachings, you've competed. Your specific style is professional smooth,
hmm
and you've had how many partners?
Uh, over the course of about 8 years, I think it's been about 6.
Okay,
Yeah.
very
Melinda,
nice.
my current partner, is my 6th partner. Yeah.
Very nice. So all that to say, ballroom dancing has, I mean, because you weren't planning on becoming a ballroom dancer.
No, definitely not.
What were you planning on becoming?
Uh, well, when you're 18, especially as
Right.
a male, you never really know what you want to do
True.
until you hit 25 or 30, I think. Even older possibly for some people, but I would say I didn't really have a drive. I've been a cook and a chef most of my life on the side before ballroom dancing really grew enough in my life to be able to have it as a career.
Mm,
And so I was always looking at working at restaurants and being a chef
okay.
and going to culinary school officially, even though I've been a cook my
Wow.
whole life. Um, there's a lot of options. I've kind of done every job you can think of on the side while I was building my dance career.
Mm,
So retail,
yeah.
clothing, fashion design, stuff like that. Just, you know, unofficial stuff.
Lots of different skill sets that have kind of come together to culminate into the you that we have sitting in front of you now,
Yeah.
which is lovely. So that being said, you and I have had an interesting journey of connection, uh, which is very recent. So for those of you who know our previous ambassadors, we've introduced you to all of our practitioners at this point, which we're very excited for us to have a team of people for everyone to work with. But now we've started introducing our ambassadors, and we have, I think you are number 4, I believe, at this point, which is very exciting. And our first few ambassadors are very known in our industry. They are, champion level dancers, or they are people who have been everywhere, that kind of thing. What I loved about what you're bringing to the table is what I like to say is boots on the ground, right? You are the true example of someone who is a professional working in this industry. You've competed, you've had some very good results, but you're also like you're not in the peak of your career yet. Like you're really like working towards this incredible journey. And I think when we listen to a lot of the professionals who maybe have retired already and have already gone through their journey, there are so many places where they're like, oh, if I would have known this, I would have done this differently, or this is what kind of like made that decision possible, or what have you. And you have had those times already, but there's so much story left to tell of your professional career. And you reached out, well, actually, my my dad got involved, as he does, and in a good way. And you have started sharing a lot of personal affirmations and guidance on social media, which caught a lot of people's attention. Can you share more about that?
Yes, I've gone through a lot of, as we all have, I'm sure at some point,
Mm,
gone through a lot of growth, and the thing that sparked that growth was hardship,
mm,
um, and a lot of mental health, kind of while we're all here, a lot of mental health issues that depression, not feeling like you have a way out, not
mhm,
seeing the bigger picture sometimes, and just struggling with how do you do this thing called life? And
mhm,
um, I love poetry. I think there's poetry in everything in the world, in life, in our relationships, in nature, in interpersonal communications, in dancing. It's ironic because so many times through my dancing, and the older I get, the more experience I get, the more I see how many correlations there are between relationships between people and relationships in dancing. Like the communication,
Yes.
you can't be you can't be a good partner in a dance partnership without being whole. You can't be a good partner in a life to a friend, to a partner, to a life partner, whatever, without being whole yourself.
Mhm.
And just kind of sharing
And
these
just to
perspectives.
clarify, I'm so sorry to cut you, but just to
Yeah, yeah,
clarify,
yeah.
when you're saying whole, that doesn't mean perfect, having it all figured out. Like, explain to me when you mean whole for those who are trying to understand what that means.
One of my favorite quotes by Carl Gustav Jung: "The purpose of life is not to strive for perfection, but for wholeness." I love that quote. It's carried me through my life. And the idea with that, I think that I glean from that, is that you have to embrace the good and the bad. And to us, in reference to Carl Jung's perspective, the dark side is the part of us that we deem as societally unacceptable.
Mm,
To a billionaire, to him, maybe generosity, kindness, and grace is a weakness. So that's his shadow self. To me, for a long time, standing up for myself and fighting for what's best for me, to me that was just being an asshole. Like, to me, sorry, to me, to me that was
no,
being a
that's
mean
fine. That's
person. Being assertive was
yeah.
like wrong. So I was
Mhm.
always very passive as a child, and even as a young adult. And when I started to accept myself and accept what was best for me, I started to accept that the good and the bad are what makes me whole. Our experiences,
Mm.
our negative experiences, our pain, our trauma, all the stuff that we've all gone through, that we're currently going through, that's what makes us whole.
I think
And
that's
I
beautiful.
think,
Yeah.
thank you.
Sorry, go ahead. Then you can
Yeah,
continue with where we were at. I just really wanted people to get that nugget because I think when we hear the word whole, it means that, oh, you've got it all figured out. Like you're a whole
no,
person and everything's perfect and you have no issues and you've figured out all your trauma. And it's like, no, that's not at all what whole means.
no, no. I think in a nutshell, it's accepting imperfection.
Mhm.
Years ago, I wrote a poem. I can't ever remember it, and I might rewrite it again at some point. But the part that I always remember and I do come back to mentally is the idea that we're all mirrors. As children, we mirror what we see.
Mhm.
As children, we see someone yelling and we think that that's normal. We become what we are like around. We're all mirrors as a child.
Right.
As we get older, we get scratches on that mirror. We have hardships, bullying, whatever have you, bad things that
Mhm.
happen to us as children growing up into our teenage and adult years. And these scratches on this mirror they don't make it imperfect. They make it what it is. And the idea that can turn you into a diamond. A diamond is made through that cliche concept of it takes pressure to make a diamond, coal being compressed, and compressed makes a diamond.
Right.
All these scratches on this mirror that we were as a child, that innocent child, all these scratches are what give us these multifaceted perspectives and that make it beautiful. And the scars
Right.
that we have, that we all carry, they don't go away. It's not that you're ever going to make them go away. They just become a part of us. And that's in the end what makes us beautiful, I think.
Well, and it's the lessons learned, the
Yeah.
redirections. That's kind of when I hear you say scratches on the mirror. That's what it reminds me of is that it doesn't necessarily always have to be deep, deep traumas. It can just be like, oh, I learned that this was something that, worked for me, or this is something I enjoy. And so I had to kind of get a scratch on the mirror, quote unquote, to
Yeah.
make it to understand that lesson or understand that thing about me, maybe setting a boundary with somebody that you're like someone pushed you too far and you got a scratch on the mirror, but at the same time now you have a boundary that allows you to protect your peace in some way of your life. I don't know, I mean, I'm just multiple
I actually
examples
want to
of the same
follow up
thing.
on that
Yeah.
because something I learned, that it was actually from Codependence Anonymous, which I started going to in my 20s, when that was one of the first things that actually, I guess, late 20s, early 30s, that started to spark my growth, my self growth, and learning how to be
Yeah,
introspective
the personal development
was,
journey.
yeah, is that resentment is the best teacher you could ever have. Because
Mm.
resentment tells you that you skipped a step of healthy choices. If I'm resentful to someone, that
Mhm.
means I didn't set a boundary and I let them trot on me. It means that I
Yeah.
I didn't communicate my needs. It did means I didn't communicate like well. So resentment, if you are resentful to someone, regardless whether it was your choice or theirs, or regardless whose fault it was that that bad situation happened, that resentment that you feel is a wonderful teacher that it'll tell you, okay, I probably should have laid a boundary way back then and I didn't, and
Mhm.
that's why I'm
Mhm.
resentful now. That's why this big bad thing happened, because I let it happen, because I didn't set a boundary.
Right. Yep. I totally, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So that being said, now you are, or did you have something to continue? Sorry, I feel like I
No,
cut you
no,
in the middle because
no,
we
you're
went on
good. You're
all
good.
these
You're good.
fun
No, you're good.
tangents.
You're good. Sorry.
No, you're good. We are, you and I have now, oh, that's right. You were sharing things on Facebook. And
Mhm.
that caught my eye, caught my dad's eye. He's like, you got to share this, da da da. So I shared it on our dance wellness community page. I can't even remember what it was about. You had a bunch of different videos of things that just were very, wonderful, lights of affirmations, things like that. And then you and I started talking, and it became, we shared a vision, right? Of things that you've been through, things that you are currently going through, that you have found your way, and you're again, you're kind of in this journey where a lot of the things that we were discussing of sustainable lifestyles and things like that were hitting for you, and we were able to continue that conversation. And I was like, oh my gosh, we got to do something with this. You know what I mean? Like, you're kind of, again, you're the voice of the people here. And that's really what I try to be. That's the thing that I really try to, like I said, I love that term, boots on the ground, of like not being the person that's overseeing and thinking that I know what people need, because I don't. Because I know what I need, and I know what I needed when I was competing, and I know what I need now. But, well, I do. Some days I feel like I don't, but 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 that being said, listening to so many, we went to lunch together and we started talking about all these variety of challenges that we face, not just in this industry, but in life. Because, our industry parallels a lot of what life is. You know what I'm saying? The
Agreed.
structure of the
Yeah.
way things are. So the issues that we're having are not because of the ballroom dance industry, they're just because of life. And the
They're
industry is just
amplified.
the vehicle. Yeah, it's amplified through the vehicle because it is something that we really care about and we want to achieve and we want to do well in. And so all of a sudden, there's all these little things. But there were so many different layers of what can create the sustainable lifestyle, and so many different categories, because you're competing in the professional division, but we have pro-ams that are competing as amateurs, and then we have vendors who are selling products, and we have judges, and we have studio owners who are trying to keep a studio open, and we
Yeah.
have, I mean, the list goes on and on, of how we're trying to facilitate in this industry. how how do you feel moving into this next chapter, now that you're in a fresh start, a brand new chapter in California? How do you feel that that is going to open your eyes to a little bit more of how you can succeed, maybe more, like you said, what you've been through, more of a balance of creating that rest and play, of push and reset? You know what I'm saying?
Mhm. I would say I think going into any new endeavor, any new situation, any fresh start, any new job, any new partnership, anything that's new, I think having the correct perspective of what your goal
Yeah.
is probably the biggest lesson I've learned. Like when I moved to California, I made the decision to widen my horizon more. Minnesota was amazing. I had 2.5 years there. I learned so much about myself, about what I wanted, what I didn't want. I learned I learned a lot. And I think I needed that 2.5 years in the Midwest to calibrate for all the opportunities that are here. There's business opportunities, there's more dancing opportunities, there's coaches, there's just endless opportunity here that I'm actually really excited of. A lot of things have already come up, and I'm including being able to be a part of this and hopefully give back to younger dancers that are coming up. And I guess to answer your question, going into it with the right perspective, saying, okay, these are the lessons I learned. I'm going to do it this way now. Like, this is mistakes that I made in the past. This is what I want to achieve going forward, have 2 or 3 attainable goals,
Yeah.
mental goals of
Clarity.
how I want clarity, mental goals of how I want to live, to be a better
Yeah.
person, physical, tangible goals of what I'd like to achieve. I think going into it and making those plans with the right perspective ahead of time is probably the biggest
Yeah.
thing.
How I want to live, that phrase just hit for me real quick. Because I think that especially with where you are in your professional career, that's not something we often discuss or ask ourselves of how do I want to live every day? I think that's what gets so many people that I talk to that either are finished with their career or they're in their career right now, they're feeling a little bit lost because they're like, my day to day is not what I want it to be, but I'm working towards this goal. So I understand this is the sacrifice I need to make. And that's what we talk a lot about, is being able to achieve at a high level without sacrificing yourself in the process. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not going to have seasons of work, that you're not going to have, times where it's going to be like, okay, maybe we're not going to get as much sleep, or there's going to be back-to-back competitions like that. Yes, you got to do what you got to do for the goal. But I think more often than none, that becomes a way of life for a lot of people, is that hustle and grind, that survival mode, that, oh, I'll get a break after the next comp. Oh,
Yeah.
and then like the next break, the break never comes. Essentially, we keep moving the
Yeah.
goalposts. Oh, I accomplished this, but now I want to accomplish this. And like you said, opportunities come. You're not going to turn down an opportunity. And so those things are wonderful. They're not things we're complaining about. But how do I think that's what we're trying to figure out, is how we at least maintain some level of ourselves, of our way of life in the process outside of dance, or even our way of life within the dance world,
Yeah.
to be able to not feel like we have no control over what's happening, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I I love the word calibration, because
Yeah.
so much in what we do in dancing, all these micro movements that we do to move
Yeah.
with fluidity and control, they're just calibrations. Because you know this, like, every time you dance, it's going to be a little bit different, because you and your partner are two individual people dancing beside each other, whether you're with a
Right.
student, another professional, it doesn't really matter.
Correct.
And in life, it's the same thing. um the 3 pieces that have kind of also guided me is accept, change, or leave. And it can apply
Oh,
to every situation ever. I haven't found a situation yet that is, and the day I do, I'll share, because I
okay.
haven't found anything. You can accept the situation the way it is. You can say, okay, the results aren't what I wanted. I
Mm-hmm.
accept that. The change, you can change what's in your control. So evaluate what in the situation
Mm-hmm.
is within your control and what's not. I can't
Yes.
control other people. They are going to
Right.
act how they act. They're going to do what they do. I can't control that. I can control how we respond. I can control. So if the results weren't what I wanted and I don't accept that these are the results I got, okay, I'm going to change it by working harder, by practicing
Right.
more, by doubling down on my technique, by getting more coaching. That's something I have within my
Right.
control.
Right.
And leave. If the situation is not healthy for you anymore, if
Yeah.
the situation is not taking you where you need you to go in a helpful manner, or even if it is taking you where you need to go and you're not healthy, happy,
Mm-hmm.
sustainable, then leave. Doesn't
Right.
mean leaving the career. It could mean leaving a studio. It could mean leaving a partnership. It could be leaving it. But again, that's the last
Right.
resort. That's why it's the last one.
Totally.
And everything falls within one of these.
Yeah.
And the simplicity of it,
I
it
was
allowed
just about,
me,
yeah, go ahead. No,
go
no, go
ahead.
ahead.
The simplicity of it, it allowed me to accept so much more.
Hmm.
To just be okay with things being the way they are and then roll with it.
Well, that's the thing is that literally the simplicity is what I was about to say. I was like, that sounds
Yeah.
so like so not overwhelming, because I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest issue that I see people facing is when they're having these challenges or these burnout moments, things like that. They don't know where to go. There's so many options. And especially for, I don't want to say it like put it on a pedestal, but for people who are artists in the dance world, who are competing at a high level, who have discipline, who are willing to pivot at any moment, both literally and figuratively, um, they we have a lot of options available to us, right? We have a lot of awareness, a lot of open-mindedness, a lot of willing to do things to get to the goal. And unfortunately, that creates a lot of like almost analysis paralysis, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden you're like, I don't know what to do. Like, and then if I try this and it doesn't work out, am I able to come back from that and try something else? And it becomes very challenging to understand where to go. So I love what you just did there is you took something very, very complicated and overwhelming. Maybe it's not as complicated as we make it in our heads, but our brains make it so
Very true.
complicated and overwhelming. And you took it and you simplified it to be like, listen, put it in one of these categories. And honestly, even the leave one, like you said, feels so intimidating and feels so scary that
Yeah.
sometimes the other two, maybe we didn't see them as options before, but now because we're seeing it next to the third option, these seem so much prettier. Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's being able to kind of almost compare and contrast as well, I feel.
Perspective. Yeah.
Perspective. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so
I'll never
interesting.
forget. You said going back, you said something a bit ago about how it seems so daunting, and we often feel like we've been stuck. We've all been there, I think, in
Of
our career
course.
that we feel stuck. We don't feel like we have any options.
Right.
And I'll never forget, I was at a competition. I'd been competing pro am about 8 or 9 years, and
Hmm.
very little training. I was at the Yuletide Ball in Washington D.C. before they moved it
Yeah.
to Reston, Virginia, and I was at that point. That was probably the lowest point in my life. I was surrounded by toxic people. I didn't value myself. I didn't value my worth. I didn't think I was anything. I
Mm.
think I was about 26 or 7, and I wasn't making enough money to make it a sustainable career, so I had 2 other jobs as well as the teaching. And I was at a competition and I was talking to Bill Sparks, amazing, amazing
Mm.
man.
Amazing man.
And he's always been very supportive of me. And I was like, I don't think I can do this anymore. It was New Year's and I was I'm not going anywhere. I'm not progressing. The town that I was teaching in was relatively small. There was one dance studio.
Mm.
So it was either work somewhere else, not dance, or move out of town. And I didn't
Right.
think of that as an option, as you said, like it's daunting.
Mm. Sometimes you don't see that. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. And Bill Sparks, he took my face. He said, "Don't give up." He said, "Don't give up. You're going to be a champion someday. Don't give up." And I didn't, and I'll never forget that. And very soon after that, I moved to DC, and then I got formal
Yeah.
training and found a professional partner, and that's when my career took off. But man,
Wow.
that just one person telling me to not give up,
That's it.
that someone believed in me, just one
Yeah.
person was
Almost
enough
more than you
to
believed
change
in
my
yourself
career.
at that point.
Yeah,
Does
yeah.
Bill know that that
I've
was
told
so
him this. Yeah,
impactful? Okay. Okay,
yeah,
good.
yeah.
See, that is exactly what I'm talking about. This is something we were talking about at lunch as well, is you everyone has an opportunity to like say something to somebody that could be so pivotal.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can just be a hug. Sometimes it doesn't even
Hmm.
need to have words.
Yeah.
And I think that is something just to know that like you're being seen, you're appreciated, you're doing the right thing, even though the path feels hard right now, you are on the right path and you are in the right place. I think that is a big question I have asked myself many, many times over the years of like, am I doing the right thing? Am I on the right path?
Yeah.
And to have someone like that, I mean, even if it wasn't someone as iconic as Bill Sparks, you know what I mean? Already that's amazing to have
Yeah.
someone like that validate you in that way. But even if it wasn't, and if it was just a peer, you know,
Yeah.
or even just one of your students that was like, you make a difference in my life.
Yeah.
You know, like that's so impactful as well for a professional to hear.
Yeah.
And knowing that like we're facilitating somebody else's dance journey or somebody else's happiness journey, you know,
Mhm.
it doesn't even need to be dance. Dance is just the vehicle, but that is incredible. That is something I want more to happen in what we're doing here with the dance wellness community, is to be able to have those more of those moments that we're not just passing through from competition
Yeah.
to competition, and we're actually not just asking people how they're doing, but also just being more aware of the people around us. I was actually just talking to a really good friend of mine uh, this last weekend, and we were chatting about that. And she goes, "Well, everybody can't ask everybody how they're really doing. Like what, like some people won't tell you because you're not that close to them." And I said, exactly. But everybody has an inner circle, and everybody has people in their inner circle that they care about deeply. And so hopefully by, 6 degrees of separation or whatever, everybody will be in someone's inner circle.
Yeah.
Right. And so if we are, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. I liked what you just said is that we're sorry to interrupt, but I like that
No,
you just said that because ask someone how they're doing twice. If you ask
yeah,
somebody once, that's what everybody does.
that's
The
it. And they're
cashier
going
at
to
the
say, I'm
grocery
fine.
store, right.
Yep.
If you ask them twice, it can take down a little bit of layer of
Mhm.
that self-protective defense that we all put up in society that well, no, they don't actually care. Ask
Right.
twice in a softer tone.
Right.
And that can just change, like you said, it can change somebody's life. And I think the other part that took me forever to realize is so many of us as dancers are very understanding and empathetic. We love dance because it's a vulnerable thing. It's something that's an expression. You can't be a dancer. I believe you can't be a dancer and not have feelings
Right.
and not have some access to those feelings. And I think I'll say from my own experience, like I was such a giver that I gave everything and I didn't take care of myself,
Mm,
of my emotions, of my time. And because of that, you don't have your cup's empty. You don't have anything left to give at some certain point.
yep.
And the
I always
takeaway, I
say
think,
you can't pour from an empty glass. So it's yes,
yes,
very similar.
yes. And the takeaway is if we value ourselves, if we take care of ourselves, if we focus on
Mhm.
our own mental health, our own personal happiness, our own goals, our own dreams, we will have extra to give. And if you
Mhm.
keep focusing on valuing yourself, on creating wholeness in your own life, you will have extra to give always. And that's when we have a community. That's what I'm seeing. That's what I love what you're doing is you're bringing all the people together that do value themselves, that do have
Mhm.
talents to share, so that all of our cups are always full. A rising tide lifts all boats. And I love that you're putting this together. And I see there's an actual movement here. And I love what you're doing with this.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, thank you. Thank you for speaking on behalf of it and just being more open to these conversations. This is exactly what we're trying to do. Like you said, I always say it's not a membership, it's a movement.
Yeah.
Because it is a movement, and this is something that we're kind of rewriting how to do this. I started doing this with my business partner about I would say almost 7 years ago at this point, and we created an academy for entrepreneurs, and it was all about beating the burnout, right? And
Yeah.
we never saw entrepreneurs that weren't like, oh, hustle culture, grind, you can sleep when you're dead, like survival mode. Like that was kind of the millennial mindset as well,
Right.
of like, you want to be successful, you want to be a millionaire, this is how you got to do it. And nobody was doing it any other way. And then as tools, resources, softwares, AI, all these things started helping create more opportunity for us to do the things that needed to be done, and give the admin tasks to somebody else. There was all of a sudden there was this open space for us to decide what we wanted to do with that time.
Yeah.
And so many entrepreneurs, because they didn't know any different, took that time and they worked harder. They were like, oh my God, now I could build a second business. Oh my gosh, now I can do this. Now I can. And it was never, we didn't really see anyone as the example of saying, oh, I'm going to go take a break. Oh, I'm going to go take a walk. Oh, I'm going to go do some meditations. Or, oh, I'm going to go have lunch with a friend that I've been telling them I'm going to go have lunch with them forever. And we were like, this doesn't make any sense. How do you recharge? You don't let your phone die and go to zero and then expect you to make a phone call. Like, it just didn't,
Right.
the math didn't math. So my business partner and I were like, there's got to be a way. And she came from like psychology and, self-worthiness and all of that. And I came from the systems and the perfectionism. And so together we were trying to create the logic and and the emotion side of things and be like, you can be a successful entrepreneur and a high performer without sacrificing everything to make that happen. And like you said, pouring from an empty glass. And so dancers are high achievers. We're high performers. We want to stay that way. Cause I think that's the thing is what a lot of people would look at me and say, oh, work-life balance, that doesn't exist. Right. And they're like, if you want to rest, you won't be a high achiever.
Right.
You have one or the other. And now we're realizing in the last, 5 to 6 years, even a little bit more than that, that is there is another way to succeed. And
Yeah.
it's
I
also by
think,
redefining your goals maybe sometimes.
yeah, I think COVID was a big reset for everybody. As
Yes,
bad as it was, I do think that was that time to calibrate and evaluate that we all needed.
agree.
And that was kind of when a lot of people's perspective about their own personal health changed
Yeah.
when they were isolated, when they were away from their regular 9 to 5 and the full time
Mhm.
at the dance studio. I think that's when a lot of that calibration began. At least it did for me, and I know some other people as well that did for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I totally agree. At first it felt very scary as it was for everyone and not knowing where we were going to continue. I know a lot of people, that identity piece comes in where it's like, who am I if I'm not a dancer? Right? What
Yeah,
am I
yeah.
doing if I'm not going to the studio every day? And that is a whole nother conversation that we discuss in length throughout this community. However, you're right. Once people started filling their cup a little bit and just going outside and just
Yeah.
realizing like look at where you are right now. Like even just sitting outside with the sun on your face, like that is so powerful and so underrated, I think.
Yeah.
Especially in not just in our industry, but in with high achievers, with people who
Mhm.
are wanting to achieve a lot in their life, whether they be in athletic form or they be in, business form, whatever that looks like. Those people tend to focus on, because I do the same thing a lot, and I have to catch myself. I'm like, okay, especially now that I have a son, like, all right, I'm like, let's go. I'm going to just sit and play with him for 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Even just 10 minutes, that seems like nothing, but that's so much for him and such a break from what I'm doing. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's a matter of, but the awareness, I think it's the awareness, not just within ourselves, but when we were talking about asking people, I love what you said, asking people twice
Yeah.
how they're doing. Yeah, some people are not going to share with you because they don't know you that well. They're not going to tell you everything that's going on in their life. But some people actually, that could be um, a very interesting space because some people don't want to share with their people what's really going on because they
Yeah.
don't want to let them down. And so talking to a stranger who knows nothing about you could actually be a very interesting scenario for some people.
Speaking of that, I was actually it was a week before I moved here, so about 3 weeks ago, and I was at a gas station in the middle of nowhere in Wisconsin, and I was it was probably like 10 p.m. at night,
Mm,
and I'd had a long day, and I can't remember what the rest of that was happening, but I was having a hard time mentally, and a lot was like all these big changes are happening, and I'm moving next week, and it's just, everything was my head was full of stress and thoughts and
mhm,
worry and things like that, and I was in line and there was an older gentleman behind me. He had paint on his pants. He was probably in his 60s, maybe 50s, 60s. His boots had holes in them. He was obviously a working man, and I can't remember exactly how the conversation went, but I was like, "Oh, are you in line? I wasn't sure if he was in line, and he's like, oh no, you're good. And he was like, you can go ahead of me, no worries, man. And I was like, thanks, man. And he's like, yeah, no stress. And I was like, wow, I wish I could believe that. And
Right.
he's like, but why worry, man? And he was like, why worry? Like, what's it gonna do? And I was like, huh? Yeah. And it was like this stranger that I didn't know, and it
Right.
didn't seem to have any correlation in our lifestyles at all.
Right.
And he checked out and I checked out, and I was like, how do you do that? Like, I just wanted to hear it from a stranger. I said, how do you do that? How do you live with no stress and no worry? He's like, well, what's it gonna do? Just makes you mad, and then it doesn't change anything. And at that moment, I was exactly what I needed to hear. And I was literally like, I'm not ashamed of it. I started crying there. And that
Mm,
guy, like, he gave me a big hug. His
so
face
powerful.
softened a little bit, and like, he just gave me a big hug, and I fucking needed it right then.
Yep.
And
Yep.
if we allow ourselves to accept everybody, not just strangers, the world would be a better place. Like, it sounds
Agree.
cliche, but it's so simple. And I think if we allow those moments to happen, and we have a little bit of childlike curiosity when it comes
Mm-hmm.
to other people and their journeys, that it's bigger than this. We see this so much as dancers and as humans. This is what we see. And if we can just have a little bit of curiosity, I think,
Well,
into other
yeah, because
people's
you call
lives.
it you call it curiosity, but I think a lot of people call it being nosy. Right? I think my grandparents' generation, they would be like, well, you don't ask what's going on in their personal life. That's their personal life, right? And so
Yeah,
we have a mix of generations happening everywhere in the world, right? Not
yeah,
just in our industry. And so you have people that they're like, well, I'm not going to ask something that feels impolite, right? The decorum, especially in ballroom dancing, everyone's always, laced up and perfect hair and all the things. And
yeah,
so it's like, I think that's what I love what you're saying is more the curiosity of how can I be of service to somebody today? Like if we all walked into the ballroom ready to, do what it is we're there to do as a
yeah,
professional, as an amateur, as a vendor, judge, organizer, whatever. And then our second to-do list said, how can I be of service to one person today? And you're
yeah,
just away, you're walking through, seeing how the universe is going to bring you that one person that might need you. And just a little inkling of something that someone says that might feel like they're a little off, or someone coming over and really just saying, hey, I need your help for something. Like, and full on just saying, okay,
yeah,
great. I'm here to be of service, right? Instead of
yeah,
saying, oh no, I can't, I'm too busy. Right.
yeah.
Because even some people ask for the help and then sometimes we don't always give it to them because of where we are in our life. But when someone
Or it's not
asks,
convenient for us. Yeah,
that's it. Because if someone needs help, it probably isn't always going to be at our perfect time, right? But
yeah,
that's the whole point is that you're not being of service to yourself. You're not doing it when it's convenient for you. You're doing it for them.
yeah,
And so being more aware and curious of how you can be of service to somebody else, I think, like you said, that's going to change a lot of things as well, because it's going to
yeah,
delayer and unveil so many things that people have been dealing with that they were like, well, why didn't you just ask me? Or
yeah,
why didn't you say something?
yeah.
And we've had so many of those testimonies already come out that it's like, oh my goodness, like we talk almost all the time and you never mentioned that.
Yeah.
And I think that is a worse feeling to have than inconveniencing somebody.
Yeah. I like that. And if I can go off that for a second, because
Yeah.
as dancers, we're always trying to learn. We're always trying to one up. We're always trying to get that next level of technique. We're always
Yep.
trying to learn a new way of thinking about this fundamental action, whatever it is. We're always trying to learn as dancers. And once I started applying that thirst for knowledge and thirst for learning to my personal life,
Mm-hmm.
that's when everything changed. Because
Mm.
like learning from other people, if we only know what we know to be true and that's all we live by, we'll never get better. But if we're able to learn and look at other people's lives and have that curiosity of how are they living their life, and what can I learn, whether it be what not to do or what to do.
Right.
And I think if we apply that thirst for learning to our personal lives, it will also take us to a healthier mental perspective.
Yeah, because my husband always says, and this is a common phrase that a lot of people that are high achievers, they say, the way you do one thing is the way you do all things.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that you say that, because you would think that all of these high achievers and professional athletes and dancers and all of that, that we would be just as disciplined in our personal life. But that's not the case.
No, no.
And like, I'm almost getting emotional at it because I feel the same way. Like, I have my systems. I'm a systems girl, right? That's what I'm known for. And I have my systems in my life. So I will not say that, like, when people say, how is it, having a baby? Well, we had these systems already. So now we just created systems for the baby. So in that regard, yes, we are exactly the same. However, when it comes to how much water I'm drinking per day, meal prepping that I've been trying to do for years that I still just can't get myself to do because my schedule is way too crazy, right? Just different things that I think when it comes to, again, like being consistent with my therapy, all of these different things that you're just like, why am I not doing that at the same level I'm doing everything else?
Right. Yeah.
And you just question, like, what we just can't, my first instinct is, well, I just can't do it all. That's like, sure. But then, like, I think to myself, I could do more if I was taking better care of myself.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's just so many layers to that question, and so many layers to that answer. Um, that it's interesting what you're saying of, like, I love exactly what you just said, is taking that same discipline from our professional career and putting it into our personal life and being hungry to want to create the same type of high performance results. And I mean, it doesn't mean that we have to be like,
No, no, but
in the
there's a
gym
lot
and
of there's so many medical trials and studies that have been done
yeah.
that our mental health directly correlates and affects our physical health.
Oh, totally.
Like, how many times have we had a week and a half, 2 weeks of teaching straight with no sleep and very little food, and then a competition, and then you get sick after the competition?
Right.
Like, your body's super stressed, so it creates sickness to
Well,
to
yeah,
give you a
the immune
chance to sit
system
down.
barriers come down, and then all of a sudden, whatever you're around, now you're susceptible to those things because you're not taking
Right.
care of yourself. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's usually embassy and USDC is when all that happens.
Yeah, that's true.
Everyone gets sick.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yes, no, absolutely. This is so wonderful. This is just a taste of what I want people to know of what you're bringing to the table as an ambassador, but also the types of conversations we can be having um,
Yeah.
in a more curious and servicing way.
Yeah.
And like, and what I love is, like you said, is that we're not trying to tell people when they rest that it should be less high performance. You can
Hmm.
still do things at that level. It's just like what does resting as a high performer look like? Right? Like, these are
Yeah.
the questions we need to start asking ourselves. Like, how would someone who wants to achieve at the highest level, what does resting at the highest level look like? And
Yeah.
and sometimes it can be, those polarities um, that we need to really start discussing so that we can continue to achieve all of these amazing goals that we want to achieve in our careers and in our lives.
Yeah. There's you're talking about resting. I think there's like the three kind of pillars of what your program is trying to support: of financial guidance,
Yes,
mental health guidance, and
physical.
physical.
Mhm.
So, like, that one's resting. I think then there's like the emotional part, and that's
Emotional
kind of
regulation.
emotional regulation, emotional
Yeah,
awareness.
yeah.
One of my favorite things, I'll leave you with this, is there's a rabbi on YouTube, and what he does is he's very quirky and has a funny accent, and I love it. And he talks about different emotions and how they manifest ourselves in the life. It's a very short clip. If you can find it, just look up the rabbi and the lobster. The
Okay.
idea is, he says, I was in the doctor's office and I was reading a magazine about lobsters. And I was like, I don't know about lobsters. What about lobsters? And he learned that in this magazine that lobsters, when they grow, they they get too big for their shell, they get uncomfortable, and then they crawl under a rock. They to take to protect themselves from predatory fish. They shed their shell and then they grow a new shell and then they come back out. They grow for years, they get uncomfortable, process repeat.
Wow.
If lobsters had doctors, they wouldn't grow. They would take a Vicodin, take a painkiller, and suffer through the uncomfortable shell, and they wouldn't grow. They wouldn't progress. And his perspective is, to have growth, you have to be vulnerable. You have to shed your shell and have no shell and be vulnerable and show a soft side of you
Mm-hmm.
to be able to grow. And that's what those uncomfortable conversations, those
Yeah.
initially uncomfortable. Once you learn
Yeah.
how to be a little bit vulnerable and open up to people that you know you can trust, that you can care about, that care about you, it becomes exponentially less painful and you start to
I agree.
feel free.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah,
that's
those
one of the,
conversations actually end up being very refreshing and
yeah,
very soul fulfilling than they
yeah,
do scary.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
that
I
that
love
human
that.
need to be understood and be heard,
Hmm.
but you can only be heard if you talk and you
Yeah.
actually have these conversations.
Right.
So for people that are struggling, I would just say, don't be afraid to talk. Be
Hmm.
okay being vulnerable and tell your embarrassing stories of what you're struggling with to people that you know you can trust, people that you value, that you know value you. And it doesn't matter how much or little their experience is, if they're willing to listen, you got it off your chest and you're able
Hmm.
to talk about it.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here.
Cool.
Thank you
Thank you for the
for
opportunity. Looking
uh,
forward to what this can create.
yes, I'm so excited for your new journey in
Yeah.
California. We're going to see each other so much more now that you're on this coast. It's going
Yeah.
to be wonderful. And there is, yes, so many exciting things to come. You guys, we have a brand new app that is launching this month, which we are so excited about. We have next year, we're going to start doing, a tour with some recovery lounges throughout the competition so people can actually come and talk and have a moment of peace in the middle of the competition. We have so many exciting things coming, and Dominic is becoming a huge part of that. So thank you for being here. Thank you
Thank you.
for sharing your story, because I know that that can be difficult as well. But like you said, the more we do it, the easier it gets.
Agreed. Agreed. Awesome. Thank
So
you, Christine.